Hello, friends. So, today let's learn about women, caste, and reform. That is the chapter 8 of the class 8th history textbook. Now, before furthering on with this chapter, let's pose ourselves a question that why actually these two sectors, these two group of people needed reforms in the pre-independence era. What was what were the things that were actually kept away from them? What were the things that inhibited, that prohibited them to discover themselves, to move forward, to have the life that is their right, that is supposed to be their right. So let's move on to see what happened in the pre-independence era and why these sectors needed reform in general. Women in earlier days. So here we can see a picture of sati that was practiced in the pre-independence era. This system had this thing that when a man died, when a husband died, the wife of that man had to be on the pyre that was of the husband's pyre. She had to be there, and she was burnt along with her husband, burned alive. So I know how impractical that sounds to you, but that used to happen to women. That used to happen to almost all the women associated with this Hindu culture, Hindu stereotypical culture that used to prevail in the pre-independence era. The women who did not accept this was they were not they were not seen as very good women, very moral women. So this was this social taboo that was attached to this practice, that women had to be sati on their husband's death. This is not just the only thing that happened in the pre-independence era. This, along with many other things that would seem in today's world so impractical and so cruel to us, but that used to happen. That happened to all the women in Indian society, in Indian Hindu society, and to other religions as well. They also had a lot of things that were so stereotypical and orthodox that we needed reform in these sectors. So there was, let's see what was there. So there was sati. Of course, we have seen sati. It was very common 200 years ago. Women did not have equal rights to property or education as well. So first is this. Second is they did not have any equal rights to property or education. Now let's forget about property for once, because okay, that is not that is basic, but this is the right of every human. This is the right that we cannot deny any human that is born in today's society. We cannot even imagine people who are denied being educated just because they belong to some gender or some caste or some religion. That seems so orthodox to us right now, but that used to happen. So this is why it is important that we learn history. We have to learn that what used to happen, and we have to reform. We have to make our mindsets according to that. We have to see what cruelty happened in that era, and we have to get over that. We have to think in other ways. We have to think in so many productive ways that can help the people of today, not just women, but all the people in general. This is not just for upgradation of one sect, one caste, one gender, one religion. This is upgradation for a humankind as altogether, being altogether. So sati was one of the system that was very common and which was very cruel to women. This is one. Now they did not have any educational or property rights. Of course, we had this thing known as Stridhan, but then Stridhan, even the Stridhan was not theirs. It used to be, distributed in her in-laws. So actually, there is no source actually that could, justify that Stridhan was actually gained by the female, the daughter themselves, because it was usually, distributed to all the in-laws. So that was also not there. They did not have any social, cultural, educational, political right. They did not have any say in the society. The wealthy people, they used to teach their daughters, or they used to teach the female at their houses. They used to do homeschooling to these people. They used to do homeschooling for all the women, because they could not imagine a society where female can go out and have educational right, have education. So in that society, it was a big deal for them. Let's move on. The caste system. Many jobs that were considered polluting were taken up by the lower castes. Untouchability and segregation of these groups was also practiced. So we know very well about the caste system and the women reforms nowadays. So this is the pyramid that used to happen. We have on the upper, on the top, we have Brahmins. Those were mostly priests and academicians. Then we have Kshatriyas. Those were warriors and kings. Then we have Vaishya, who were merchants, landowners, traders. And then we have Shudra, commoners, peasants, or servants. And then below all of these are untouchables. Those people who were not allowed to be in the same society as these people. So these two were completely distinguished as human beings. These were untouchables. These were out of caste, street sweepers, latrine cleaners. These people used to do all the works that the upper caste people could not do. So these people were assigned jobs that the upper caste people designated as impure. That if they would do these things, they would also be impure. They would be touched with impurity. So these were assigned to these untouchables. That is a pathetic system. We can all agree on that. But that is what used to happen. So this Varna system, actually, we may call this as Varna system rather than caste system, because caste system had huge lines. A Varna system is very constrained. So they used to imagine a figure of God, and the top, the head was the head of the god was this Brahmin. The shoulders, who used to fight, was Kshatriya. The thighs, they used to be the Vaishya, and the feet, they used to be Sudra. So God has these four parts, but untouchables, they were not even considered as, a part of God's creation. They were not even, they were not seen as human maybe that time, because all the inhuman deeds were done by them, and they did not even get any appreciation for that. The people thought that it was supposed to be their job because they are born in that system. So this came out of heritage. So this hierarchical system of caste was very, very prevalent in the pre-British era. Even now we can see that this system is very prevalent. If we see all the laws that we have today, untouchability is the only law that does not have any negative connotation, that does not have any limitation on it. It is solid, it is very, very strict, and it has no limitation in that. So now we know that there were many jobs that were considered polluting, and these jobs were supposed to be done by the untouchables, so-called untouchables that time. So till now we have seen the two victims of the pre-British era, that are women and the caste system, the people who suffered from the caste system, who suffered because of that. Now these two people, obviously women, if we see women here, when we see women here, they were not just women from the lower caste. We cannot even imagine the situation of those people, but also the women of the upper caste. Even they were, not given any kinds of rights. So we cannot call the upper caste as, very modern or very modern way of thinking, because all the women were considered the same. They were not considered as the same, having the same kind of intellectual level as that of men. The men of that society did not used to consider the female as being, an equal to them. So basically, these two genres of people, they suffered a lot. And let's see that in what kinds and in what ways they suffered, and who are the people who came up with the reforms for, betterment of these people. Now, Raja Ram Mohan Roy founded the Brahmo Samaj in Calcutta. He advocated for social equality, the abolition of untouchability and sati, superstitions. He also advocated for widow remarriage. So some of the social taboos that were associated with women were not only sati, it was also about education, it was also about not going out, it was also about widow remarriage. So the widows, they were not supposed to remarry. First, if your husband is dying, then you are supposed to be sati. And if you are not doing sati, if you are not going sati, then you cannot have a right to remarry. Because if you remarry, the people will just kill you in your mental state, because they would not let you live in the society, in the normal society. You will be forced to live certain kind of life that will not be something that you'd want. So some women, they used to willingly accept. There might be something other that must be going on in their mind, we don't know. But for some women who might not be, very, very in, who might not be willing to go sati, they also might have thought that, the society will not let me live anyway. So what is the use of living? And that kind of mental torture was there. So we can see that not just one kind of equality, not just one kind of injustice, but there were different kind of injustice that we come across towards what was happening to women during that time. After sati, okay, sati is one of the sati is like, we can just assort it as the most cruel thing. Now let's come to the widow thing. So the widows, they had to shave their hair off, because it was seen that widows, or the women whose husband had died, they were not supposed to attract men. So everything that used to being that used to make them attractive, it was supposed to be get ridden off by the female. So they were supposed to shave their head off. They were used to wear very plain and white clothes. They were used to they were supposed to eat very bad meals, and they were supposed to be in a very secluded corner of the room, mostly out of the house. They were not supposed to go to any functions, any marriages. They were not supposed to meet many kinds of people, meet men especially. So there were all kinds of stigmas that were attached to these females whose husbands have died, and they were not, they were not supposed to live like they were humans. If their husband died, basically they have no right to live as they had before. They had to live in a very, very weird and wrong way, according to us. Obviously that time it was justified on a lot of grounds, but we can see that these social reformers, they came up, and often they came up with the solution that came from the ancient texts. So at that time, they knew that people, they were not, they could not believe you when you are not citing something from the ancient text. They only believed, they were blindly following the ancient text, and they believed everything that is written. They used to formulate or moderate their own laws, but eventually you can only, turn their heads around with citing the example of the ancient text. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he took example from the ancient text, and he said that there were laws that allowed women to remarriage, and there was nothing in the ancient text that allowed sati. There was nothing in the ancient text about sati. So that was not fair to women. That was anything but fair to women, and even widows had a right to remarry. That was also proved by him through ancient text. Now he tried to teach these superstitious people a lesson that is in their own words, that is from their own scriptures, that is from their own religious books. So he thought it the best way to tackle that. He was one of the social reformers who did a lot of things, and because of his pressure, because of his acknowledgement that the Britishers also acknowledged that this was a great problem, and they took many steps. They banned the sati, and they allowed widow remarriage. They passed a law that allowed widow remarriage. They also abolished untouchability. We'll see about that later. Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar influenced the British to pass law allowing widow remarriage in 1856. Now, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar was another social reformer who often gave examples from the ancient text that there were scriptures which allowed the widows to remarry. He gave many examples, and often these reformers were boycotted by the society. Of course, the orthodox people, they would not take all these reforms with an open arms, that okay, we are ready for the reforms, let's bring it up. No, these people, they vehemently opposed these reformers. They vehemently opposed all their ideas, and they vehemently opposed that they were trying to negotiate their system. They were trying to change their system towards betterment. They refused to believe that it can cause betterment. Rather, they often emphasize that these system had prevailed because of the westernization of our own culture. So often they used to mingle change with the westernization of any culture. But these reformers, they had a solution for the westernization, that they had brought it up from the ancient text. The ancient text that gave them the authority, the ancient text that had written that widows were supposed to remarry. It did not, of course, we don't mind the authority part, but then even the ancient text said that widow had a right to remarry. So, of course, they brought it in their own language. Now, there was Swami Dayanand Saraswati, who was founder of the Arya Samaj in 1875. The Arya Samaj was founded, also supported with widow remarriage. Swami Dayanand Saraswati was also a very strong supporter of the widow remarriage, and after a lot of movements and social reforms, widow remarriage was allowed, but of course, it was not seen as a very positive move by the society in general. So they opposed this like anything.